Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo, the Swedish-born actress who defined Hollywood's golden age, walked away from the spotlight at the height of her fame. By the early 40s, she had become one of the most recognizable faces in the world. Yet she vanished from the public eye without explanation. Her final film, released in the early 40s, was a commercial failure, but her decision to leave Hollywood wasn't just about box office numbers. Garbo had grown disillusioned with the relentless demands of the studio system, which treated actors as commodities rather than artists. She retreated to Europe, primarily living in Switzerland, where she sought the privacy she had always craved. What many don't realize is that Garbo was offered numerous opportunities to return to Hollywood, including lucrative contracts and roles that could have reignited her career. She refused them all. Her reclusive nature became legendary. But it wasn't just about avoiding the press. Garbo's departure was also fueled by the political tensions of the time, as she reportedly feared the growing instability in the United States during the post-war years. She never returned to Hollywood, leaving behind a legacy of mystery and a career that ended on her own terms. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich, the German-born actress and singer, was one of the most glamorous stars of the Golden Age, but her departure from the United States was as dramatic as her on-screen persona. By the 50s, Dietrich had grown increasingly critical of the political climate in America, particularly during the height of the Red Scare. She had become a U.S. citizen in the late 30s, but her outspoken nature and refusal to conform to Hollywood's expectations made her a polarizing figure. Dietrich moved to Paris, where she lived in near seclusion for decades. What's often overlooked is her deep disdain for the Hollywood system, which she felt stifled her creativity and reduced her to a mere image. She turned down countless offers to return to the U.S., even as her fame waned. Dietrich's later years were marked by a complete withdrawal from public life. But her decision to leave America wasn't just about politics. She had grown tired of the relentless scrutiny and the pressure to maintain her iconic image. In Paris, she found the freedom to live on her own terms, far from the glare of Hollywood's spotlight. Louise Rayner. Louise Rayner, the first actor to win back-to-back Academy Awards, shocked the world when she abandoned Hollywood at the peak of her career. In the late 30s, Rayner was hailed as one of the most talented actresses of her generation, but her relationship with the studio system quickly soured. MGM, the most powerful studio of the time, saw her as a marketable star rather than a serious artist, and Rayner grew frustrated with the shallow roles she was offered. By the early 40s, she had left Hollywood entirely, moving to Europe to escape the suffocating control of the American film industry. What's rarely discussed is how deeply personal her decision was. Rayner felt that Hollywood had betrayed her, reducing her to a one-dimensional puppet despite her immense talent. She settled in Switzerland, where she lived a quiet life, far removed from the glamour and chaos of her early years. Rayner's departure wasn't just a career move, it was an act of defiance against a system that she believed had stifled her potential. She never returned to Hollywood, leaving behind a legacy of brilliance and a cautionary tale about the cost of fame. Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker, the African-American entertainer who dazzled audiences with her electrifying performances, made a decision that defied the norms of her time. In the 20s, she left the United States, a country that celebrated her talent on stage but denied her basic human dignity off it. She moved to France, where she found not only fame, but also freedom. What many fail to grasp is that Baker's departure wasn't just about her career, it was an act of survival. In America, she faced relentless racial discrimination, even as she became a global sensation. In Paris, she was embraced as a star, performing at the Folies Bergère and becoming a symbol of the Jazz Age. Her life in France wasn't just glamorous. It was revolutionary. During World War II, she worked for the French resistance, using her celebrity status to smuggle messages and documents. She even hid refugees in her home. Despite her occasional visits to the U.S., Baker never returned to live there. She adopted 12 children from different countries, calling them her rainbow tribe, a living testament to her belief in unity and equality. Her decision to leave America was more than personal. It was a statement against the systemic injustices she endured. Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson, the silent film icon who later captivated audiences in Sunset Boulevard, was no stranger to reinvention. By the 30s, Swanson had grown weary of Hollywood's rigid studio system, which she felt stifled her creativity. She left America and spent much of her time in Europe, where she pursued business ventures and explored her passion for art. What's often overlooked is how Swanson's departure was tied to her refusal to conform to Hollywood's expectations. She was one of the first actresses to demand creative control over her projects, a move that alienated her from the powerful studio heads. In Europe, she found the freedom to live on her own terms, far from the relentless scrutiny of the American press. Swanson was also an early advocate for healthy living, promoting organic food and wellness long before it became fashionable. Her time abroad wasn't just about escaping Hollywood. It was about redefining herself as more than just a movie star. Though she returned to the U.S. for occasional work, including her legendary role in Sunset Boulevard, Swanson never fully embraced Hollywood again, choosing instead to live a life of independence and quiet rebellion. Tippi Hedren? Tippi Hedren, the star of Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds and Marnie, seemed destined for a long and glittering Hollywood career. But her story took a dramatic turn when she left the U.S. to dedicate her life to wildlife conservation. What's rarely discussed is how her departure was deeply tied to her experiences in Hollywood. After her tumultuous working relationship with Hitchcock, who allegedly tried to control her career, Hedren found herself blacklisted by the industry. Rather than fight a losing battle, she turned her attention to a cause that would define the rest of her life. In the 70s, she moved to Africa, where she worked on a film about big cats. This experience inspired her to establish the Shambhala Preserve, a sanctuary for lions and tigers in California. While she occasionally returned to the U.S. for acting roles, her primary focus remained on her conservation efforts. Hedren's decision to leave Hollywood wasn't just about escaping a toxic environment. It was about finding a purpose that transcended fame. Her work with animals became her legacy, proving that sometimes walking away from the spotlight can lead to a brighter, more meaningful path. Ramon Novarro. Ramon Novarro, the dashing silent film star who rivaled Rudolph Valentino, was once one of Hollywood's most sought-after leading men. By the 40s, however, his career had faded, and he made a decision that would take him far from the glitz of Hollywood. Novarro returned to his native Mexico, where he sought solace from the pressures of an industry that had both elevated and discarded him. What many fail to understand is how deeply his identity shaped his departure. As a gay man in an era when Hollywood demanded conformity, Novarro faced relentless scrutiny and was forced to hide his true self. The studio system, which had once celebrated his talent, now saw him as a relic of a bygone era. In Mexico, he found a quieter life, occasionally working in local cinema, but largely retreating from the public eye. His departure wasn't just about a declining career. It was about escaping a world that had never fully accepted him. Novarro's story is a haunting reminder of the personal sacrifices many stars of his time were forced to make, and his decision to leave America was as much about reclaiming his dignity as it was about finding peace. Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, the man who defined silent cinema with his iconic character, the Tramp, was exiled from the United States in the early 1950s. At the height of the Red Scare, Chaplin became a target of political suspicion due to his outspoken views and alleged ties to leftist ideologies. In 1952, while traveling to Europe for the premiere of a film, his re-entry visa was revoked, effectively barring him from returning to the country he had called home for decades. What's often overlooked is how personal this exile was for Chaplin. Despite his immense contributions to American cinema, he was vilified by the very nation that had made him a star. He settled in Switzerland, where he lived with his wife, Una O'Neill, and their children. Chaplin's exile wasn't just a political statement. It was a profound rejection of the Hollywood system and the American government's growing paranoia. He continued to create films in Europe, but his absence from Hollywood left a void that was never truly filled. Chaplin returned to the U.S. only once in the early 1970s to accept an honorary Academy Award, but he never lived there again. His departure marked the end of an era and the beginning of a life lived on his own terms. Jean Seberg. Jean Seberg, the American actress who became a symbol of the French New Wave, left the United States in the late 1950s and never truly returned. After being cast in Breathless, one of the most influential films of the 20th century, Seberg found a home in France where she was celebrated for her talent and beauty. What's rarely discussed is how her departure was shaped by the political and social climate of her homeland. In the 1960s, Seberg became an outspoken supporter of civil rights movements, including the Black Panthers, which made her a target of the FBI's COINTELPRO program. The agency launched a campaign to discredit her, spreading false rumors about her personal life that caused immense emotional distress. Seberg's decision to remain in Europe wasn't just about her career. It was about escaping the relentless persecution she faced in America. In France, she continued to work in films, but the scars of her treatment in the U.S. lingered. Her story is a chilling example of how fame and activism collided, forcing her to seek refuge in a country that valued her artistry and allowed her to live without fear of constant surveillance. Erich von Stroheim. Erich von Stroheim, the Austrian-born actor and director, was one of Hollywood's most controversial figures during its golden age. Known for his uncompromising vision and larger-than-life persona, von Stroheim was both celebrated and vilified for his work. By the 30s, his career as a director had been effectively destroyed by the Hollywood studio system, which deemed his films too extravagant and unprofitable. What's often overlooked is how deeply personal this professional rejection was for von Stroheim. He had poured his soul into his films only to see them butchered by studio executives who prioritized commercial success over artistic integrity. Disillusioned, he left the United States and returned to Europe, where he found a second life as an actor. In France, von Stroheim was revered for his talent, appearing in films that allowed him to showcase the depth of his abilities. His performance in La Grande Illusion, one of the most acclaimed films of the 20th century, cemented his legacy as a cinematic icon. Von Stroheim's departure from America wasn't just about escaping Hollywood's control, it was about reclaiming his identity as an artist. He never directed another film, but his work in Europe ensured that his name would be remembered long after his death. Dolores Del Rio. Dolores Del Rio, the Mexican actress who became one of Hollywood's first Latina stars, was a trailblazer in every sense of the word. In the 20s and 30s, she captivated audiences with her beauty and talent, but by the 40s, her career in the United States began to wane. Hollywood's rigid typecasting and the rise of younger stars left little room for Del Rio, who refused to be relegated to stereotypical roles. What's rarely discussed is how her departure from America was an act of defiance. She returned to Mexico, where she became a leading figure in the country's golden age of cinema. In Mexico, Del Rio was no longer confined by Hollywood's narrow vision of what a Latina actress could be. She worked with some of the most celebrated directors of the time, delivering performances that showcased her range and depth. Her decision to leave Hollywood wasn't just about reviving her career, it was about finding a place where her artistry could flourish without compromise. Del Rio's legacy is a testament to her resilience and her refusal to be defined by the limitations of an industry that failed to appreciate her full potential. Maximilian Schell. Maximilian Schell, the Austrian-born actor and director, achieved international fame with his Oscar-winning performance in Judgment at Nuremberg. While he worked extensively in Hollywood during the 60s and 70s, Schell never fully embraced the American film industry. What many don't realize is that Schell's decision to base himself in Europe was deeply tied to his artistic philosophy. He believed that Hollywood's focus on commercial success often came at the expense of meaningful storytelling. In Europe, Schell found the creative freedom to pursue projects that aligned with his values. He directed and starred in films that explored complex themes, often drawing on his own experiences as the child of Austrian refugees who fled the rise of fascism. Schell's departure from Hollywood wasn't a rejection of fame, it was a rejection of mediocrity. He continued to work in American films occasionally, but his heart remained in Europe, where he could create without compromise. His career is a reminder that true artistry often requires walking away from the allure of the spotlight to find a deeper sense of purpose. Anna May Wong. Anna May Wong, the first Chinese-American movie star in Hollywood, was a trailblazer who broke barriers in an industry that often relegated Asian actors to stereotypical roles. In the 20s and 30s, she captivated audiences with her elegance and talent, but behind the scenes, she faced relentless discrimination. Hollywood's refusal to cast her in leading roles, even in films about Chinese characters, was a bitter irony. In 1935, she was passed over for the lead role in The Good Earth, a film about Chinese farmers in favor of a white actress in yellowface. This blatant rejection was a turning point. Wong left the United States and moved to Europe, where she found greater respect for her craft. In Germany and the United Kingdom, she starred in films that allowed her to showcase her range as an actress, free from the racial constraints of Hollywood. What's often forgotten is that Wong's departure wasn't just about her career. It was a profound act of defiance against an industry that refused to see her worth. Though she returned to the U.S. in the 40s, her legacy as a pioneer who challenged Hollywood's systemic racism endures, a testament to her resilience and determination. Leslie Howard. Leslie Howard, the British actor best known for his roles in Gone with the Wind and The Scarlet Pimpernel, was one of Hollywood's most beloved leading men in the 30s. Yet, at the height of his fame, Howard made the surprising decision to leave America and return to his native England. His departure wasn't just about homesickness, it was driven by a sense of duty. As World War II loomed, Howard became deeply involved in the British war effort, using his celebrity status to support the Allied cause. What's less widely known is that Howard's work during the war extended far beyond acting. He produced propaganda films, gave speeches to boost morale, and even undertook covert missions for British intelligence. In 1943, while traveling on a civilian aircraft, his plane was shot down by German forces, a tragedy that remains shrouded in mystery. Some historians believe Howard was targeted because of his intelligence work, though the full truth has never been confirmed. His decision to leave Hollywood wasn't just a career move. It was a sacrifice for a cause he believed in. Howard's life and untimely death remain a poignant reminder of the intersection between fame and responsibility. Madeleine Carroll. Madeleine Carroll, the British actress who became one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars in the 30s and 40s, was a trailblazer in more ways than one. Known for her roles in Alfred Hitchcock's The 39 Steps and The Prisoner of Zenda, she was the first British actress to achieve major success in Hollywood. Yet at the height of her fame, Carroll made a decision that would change the course of her life forever. During World War II, she walked away from her glittering career to dedicate herself to humanitarian work. What's often forgotten is the depth of her sacrifice. After her sister was killed in a bombing raid in London, Carroll left Hollywood and moved to Europe, where she worked tirelessly for the Red Cross. She served as a nurse in field hospitals, cared for wounded soldiers, and even adopted 2 French war orphans. Her departure from Hollywood wasn't just a career shift. It was a profound act of courage and compassion. Though she returned to acting briefly after the war, Carroll never fully embraced the spotlight again. Her story is a powerful reminder that some stars shine brightest not on the silver screen but in their selfless dedication to others. Merle Oberon. Merle Oberon, the Anglo-Indian actress who captivated audiences with her performances in Wuthering Heights and The Dark Angel, lived a life shrouded in mystery and reinvention. Born in India in the early 20th century, Oberon faced immense challenges due to her mixed-race heritage. Hollywood, with its rigid beauty standards and racial prejudices, forced her to hide her true origins. She claimed to be born in Tasmania and fabricated a backstory to fit the industry's expectations. Despite her success, Oberon's life in America was marked by the constant fear of her heritage being exposed. In the 1940s, she left the United States and settled in Europe, where she found a more accepting environment. What's rarely discussed is how her move allowed her to live with greater freedom, away from the relentless scrutiny of Hollywood. In Europe, Oberon continued to act but also embraced a quieter, more private life. Her departure wasn't just about escaping the pressures of fame. It was about reclaiming her identity in a world that had forced her to deny it. Oberon's story is a poignant example of the lengths to which some stars had to go to navigate the complexities of race, fame, and self-acceptance in the golden age of Hollywood. Adolphe Menjou. Adolphe Menjou, the debonair actor known for his roles in films like The Front Page and A Star is Born, was one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces during the 1920s and 1930s. Yet, despite his success, Menjou's relationship with Hollywood and America was complicated. In the 1950s, during the height of McCarthyism, Menjou became a controversial figure due to his outspoken support for the House Un-American Activities Committee. What's less widely known is that Menjou's political stance alienated many of his peers, leading to a decline in his career. Disillusioned with the changing tides of Hollywood, Menjou spent much of his later years in Europe, where he found a more welcoming environment. While he never fully abandoned the U.S., his time abroad allowed him to escape the growing tensions of the American film industry. Menjou's story is a complex one, marked by both his immense talent and the divisive nature of his political beliefs. His decision to spend much of his later life in Europe reflects a desire to distance himself from the controversies that had come to define his career in America. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our new videos each week. Thanks for watching.